Being a complete newbie in programming world, I keep recording my progress on this teeny tiny project of mine called Movie Collection Database. So last night I was doing a little bit of coding again, and I created the seventh item in my menu, which I renamed to display movie category stats. In this, I want to display how many movies are categorized as comedy or sci-fi or that kind of thing. So to make this work, I created a new dictionary in my variables and data structures. This dictionary, called genre categories, contains key value pairs, and these keys are actually the categories the movies are classified by. So action, adventure, animation, and so on. But at this point, while defining that dictionary, the values of each is zero. And my task is to open the Json database. And when I open the Json database, which is actually text file, upon creating some movies, I created four of them. They are actually showing here. So this is a list, and that list, while running the first function which populates that list into this movies list. So the content of this file, as such, it's a list, open bracket, closing bracket, element 0, element 1, element 2, element 3 for now, four movies, three elements 0 through 3. These are going to be populated into the movies list at the top of my program. Then let's go back to display category stats. So the option 7 is going to be selected by the user in my menu using these statements. If neither a selected option from the menu was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it drops down to 7, and 7 is the one the user chose to use, there's one function that's going to be called, which is called get collection summary. So that function definition is right here. Let's just get down there. And in option 7, in fact, I created two functions to make this work. So I define function here in line 206, and there's no arguments passed to this function. Instead, I am going to loop through every item in the list, movie list, which contains those four movies indexed 0 through 3, and each iteration I substitute the item from the list. So this is the first item that is going to be presented as a movie here, that is this variable. And once this movie contains the information about the first movie, title, director, year, and so on, this is going to be now iterating through values for key and value pairs in movie items. If the key of that first movie dictionary in my loop here is going to be called genre, so if the key is genre, which is this line, that genre key contains now the list of categories, and that's the one I want to tackle here. So if this is genre, I create a variable, movie categories, and I assign to this movie categories variable value of that genre, which in this case is, during the first iteration of my loop, is this list containing two elements, horror and sci-fi. What happens with that? Then I drop down, so I went through the first dictionary, first movie in my movies list. I looked through all the items, key value pairs, but I remembered the value of category genre, which in this case is movie, horror, and sci-fi list here. For category, in movie categories, so now I create a variable category in movie categories. In that list I just remembered, I'm doing the following thing. Genre categories. In the category, now the category here, let's go back to the top. And the categories are adventure, animation, fantasy, romance, experimental, comedy. Values of that categories right now 0. So for each category, and in that list, I have 2 categories. So in movie categories here, I have 2 categories, horror and sci-fi in the first iteration. So for category, first is horror. In movie categories, I call that dictionary saying, hey, in your category horror, because now this word contains the keyword horror, the first, do that category plus 1. It was 0, we just saw. Now it's 0 plus 1 is 1. There's another element in the list here, remember. So we had here horror, the list of containing horror and sci-fi in the first iteration. So now we did the horror category. Now there's a second word, sci-fi. So for a category which now reads sci-fi in movie categories in this list, we did horror, now it's movie sci-fi. Genre category, sci-fi at the very top, do sci-fi plus 1. Sci-fi was, let's go back there, sci-fi was initially, sci-fi was my sci-fi, 0, 0 plus 1. And then we go, okay, that's done. So we haven't finished our movie list. This was just the first item from that list, movies list. Now we go for the second one, and it will repeat the process. We select key values. If the key is genre, we take a look at this one. We assign to movie categories its value, the value being action and sci-fi, and we call another loop through that list, highlighted, and the first category is substituted with action. We go to genre categories, action here, and we do action plus 1, which was 0, now it's 1, and so on and so forth. Once we loop through all items focusing on that category here, I call display category summary, which is this function. And that definition says print first this line, and now I do loop through the dictionary, which is created as a genre category. For category, this is my key. I call this time category, and number in genre category items, print, do some space, category, make it uppercase, and 14th character in length with this colon. That means 14 character in length, space, tab, and the number that is actually the value of that dictionary, of that category dictionary. And the job is done. Let's see how this works. So we have 4 movies, and if I go through, let's pick one genre as an example. So action. How many movies are classified with action keyword? 3. Option 7. And action 3. Let's do another test. Category sci-fi. How many movies I classified as sci-fi? 2. Let's run it again. Sci-fi, 2 movies. So far, so good. Adventure should be 2 movies. 2 movies. There's one last thing left for me to do, which I'm going to tackle in the next video. And that project is going to be complete as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, there's much more to be done in terms of the user input, their errors and stuff. But for now, I was just trying to find out if I could write a simple script doing something useful, knowing just a very few things such as loops, if statement, few data structures such as dictionaries, lists, strings, and so on.